I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Wonnarua people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Those awards, which are, when it's recognition by your peers, so you've been nominated and then voted on by your peers. They're the ones that sort of really pull the heartstrings. So
successfully seeing fruit come in and go to bottle and being really happy with the wines that have come out. There's a lot of blood, sweat, tears and worry that go into the seasons.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Scarborough Winery is an institution of the Hunter Valley. Perhaps it's due to its long history and foundations in the region, or maybe in part because Jerome Scarborough and Liz Riley make one hell of a team. Today, I'm joined by the dynamic duo. Hi Liz, hi Jerome, thanks for joining me.
Good morning.
Hello.
Wonderful to have you with us. Between the two of you, I can probably ask every single viticultural and winemaking question I've ever dreamed of. Thank you so much for making the time.
Not a problem.
It's nice to be here.
Jerome, perhaps you can start us off and take us back to how Scarborough Winery kind of all began.
Look, I guess it's through my mother and father, Ian and Merrily. They met when my father was going through Roseworthy Ag College, which at that stage had a winemaking course. They met on the side of the road when my father broke down. My mother broke down on her way into town one day, and my father just happened to be driving by and helped out the damsel in distress. Fast forward a few years, once they were married, my father was making wine in the Barossa Valley, and he was actually on his way up to Brisbane to visit his sister. And they happened to just, do a bypass through to the Hunter to see how, to have a look at, one of the other winemaking regions of Australia, and essentially fell in love with the Hunter at that point because, around Christmas time, the Barossa Valley, et cetera, is, are very beautiful. They're, everything's starting to dry out around that time, whereas the Hunter is generally green and lush at that time of year. So, and essentially from that point, they decided that they wanted to try to move up to the Hunter. Dad ended up with a job up in the Hunter Valley with Tulloch Wines and made wine for them for about 8 years, and then essentially went out on his own and in 1984 started Scarborough Wine Company with my mother. And I guess essentially the rest is history.
Wow, 1984. I can't believe that's how they actually met, with her breaking down on the side of the road. That really only happens in movies, I thought, but...
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was actually the car he was in was a car full of, winemaking talent of Australia. So Philip Shaw, Neville Falkenberg, and a few others, so it was actually quite, fortuitous. So. Well,
he had a bit of competition too. So the best man won.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, yes.
Your father, Ian, or Scarby as he's kind of known in the Hunter Valley, he's really a foothold. What are your fondest memories of working with him, as a child or in your teenage years?
Look, I get, my first memory is sort of, I guess, the winery was at Tulloch's. One night I'd gone out, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. Mum was with me. I was sort of in my Jimmy Jams, had the leopard skin slippers on and so on. And we'd sort of just gone up to say goodnight to Dad, and they were crushing some fruit coming through, and right next to the crusher there was a sight glass so that you could see as the must came through to go into the winery to make sure everything was working right. And one of the cellar hands must have accidentally closed off a valve, which they shouldn't have closed off. And we were standing around there sort of saying goodnight to Dad and so on, and all of a sudden the sight glass exploded, and we were covered in grape must, so head to toe in sticky, crushed grapes, and that, I guess, that was sort of my first real memory. And it wasn't a bad memory. It was actually quite exciting for me that, wow, all this, the hustle and bustle and these sorts of things can happen. And that's sort of, I guess, when I can remember wanting to, be a winemaker, and, thinking, this is the type of thing I'd like to do. But then I get, through the years, just the knowledge and experience that, Dad does have, through, what it's be 50 plus vintages in the Hunter now. the ability, the wines he's allowed me to see through the years, be it Australia and the Australian wines through to European wines and other wines of the world. It's all of those things. But as much as anything, the most important thing is his experience and knowledge about what sort of we need to do in the hunter. Not just in the good years, but also in the difficult years. So that you can continue to produce wine. So, yeah.
I've seen your father speak a few times, and he seems to be, from the outset, a real gentle giant. But when he does stand up to speak, you really do see a bit of a hush throughout the room and people really kind of hanging on his every word.
Yeah. That's right. He's a man of few words, but when he does speak, it's well thought out, and and there's not much padding to what he talks about. It's to the point, and very always useful information.
Oh, I wish I had a little bit of that kind of sense. That sounds like something I could learn from. Liz, you fell into the wine industry more by accident, and you met Jerome at Roseworthy Ag College. How did you get your start? And I'd love to know, what were your first impressions of each other?
I fell into the wine industry quite by accident. I had a very botanical grandmother who, as a child, we might have spent a weekend planting trees, or we might have just been doing things with her in her garden, or in that nature space, making paper. She was always a bit out there, not your average gran. And then I started to study horticulture at uni, and then went, maybe that's not quite it. And then literally saw Roseworthy on a bulletin board. So I grew up in Perth, and my folks were very supportive and said, yeah, sure, go, and see how that works out. And I've just kept moving east. So Perth to Roseworthy to New South Wales, who knows. And then met Jeremy. He was a year behind me at Roseworthy, and I remember literally the first time I laid eyes on him as he cruised on in for orientation, and went, that's a bit of all right. So, yeah, and funnily enough, I'm just going to get in early here. It's our 26th wedding anniversary tomorrow. So it's about that long since we've been in the Hunter. So, yeah, it's been a while.
And what about you, Jerome? What did you think when you first met Liz?
Well, I have to top that, really. But, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, same thoughts. I remember her because, Liz was on the student union board, sitting in the foyer at Roseworthy. Behind the desk, and it was basically the first person I met when I walked in, and then I think she took me off to my dormitory, and we had a bit of a chat along the way, and it took another 12 months from there for us to I guess really start the relationship, but had a lot to do with each other in between, and it was certainly went okay, this is Liz is definitely worthwhile having to chase after, so yeah, no doubt.
Oh, that's incredible. 26 years is something to be so incredibly proud of, especially when you work together as well. That blows my mind. Liz, you also consult for many wineries throughout the Hunter Valley in New South Wales via your business Fitbit. What do you get out of working for others on their projects, other than occasionally escaping and being able to get away?
Look, I think it's different perspectives of different growers and clients, but also how you manage risk in different regions, because we still have this climate variation, and you might just see something, you go, I can do that, or I can do that with a twist, and that would add value. So that's great. And again, it's you can ring other people and just bounce an idea around. So a lot of those relationships go from being just a client relationship to become quite, solid friendships. And, a shared problem is a problem solved. So, yeah, there's a lot to be gained out of that.
This is a question for you both. We've talked a fair bit about Shiraz and Semillon when we talk about the Hunter, but in recent years, Hunter Chardonnay has really been a major topic of conversation, both in restaurants and within sommeliers, and also, I think, in the general wine audience of Australia. Where does Hunter Valley Chardonnay sit in Australia's offerings, and how does Scarborough approach Chardonnay?
I guess, because we're a warm to hot climate, but within the Hunter we have a range where it certainly is milder to hotter. Excuse me, it gives us a lot of room to play and just different styles within the Hunter. So, and we go from heavy clay soils to the really fine hourglass sandy soils, and that in itself gives us a lot of different flavour profiles and so on. And but generally we do sort of see we're more that medium to full bodied style of Chardonnay as Australia goes, and more generous flavours, fuller palate, and the like. So I think it gives we have because of the climate a bit more room to play we can sort of zero in on sort of separate styles and not sort of restricted to certain styles in maybe some of the cooler climates are.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, in my opinion, the Scarborough Yellow Label Chardonnay has been just a pillar of strength throughout the changing Chardonnay landscape of Australia. And it's a wine that I remember clocking, 15 years ago when I started in the industry, and something that I could always rely on to be a really solid Chardonnay that had lots of flavour, full-bodied, and it's continued now. But you're actually taking a little step away and looking at your Keepers of the Flame. So run us through the 3 vintages of that new release of Chardonnay.
So I guess, the concept, started a few years ago where Liz and I, we're running around looking at the Scarborough vineyards, but Liz is then looking at other vineyards, throughout the Hunter. And there's always especially when the fruit's ripe enough for us to start tasting it, there's always a block where you go, that's looking quite special, or that's just looking a little bit different. How about these flavours? Be it soil, clone, site, different aspect to the vine rows and so on, and a lot of those wines within our holdings and with the vineyards we own and the vineyards that we lease, the majority of that Chardonnay was going into our yellow label, which was great. And if there's special parcels out there that are going into that, that's obviously lifting the general quality. But in 2018, there was we really started going, well, hang on, let's maybe try something a little bit different. Can we do a small parcel? And then we ended up doing 3 small parcels over 3 years, with the 2019, the 2020, and the 2021. And the style has, I guess, evolved with what we're doing with the Chardonnay from where we first started in 2019 through to 2021. The first vintage 2019 is a selection of barrels out of a particular block up in the Upper Hunter vineyard, our Ogilvy's View vineyard, which is a relatively new planting, although the vines are about 25 years old now. Are they, Liz?
About that.
And the clone there, I can never remember the clone.
95 with a little bit of 96 and 809.
Yeah, so with the 809, we really see quite there's a different flavour profile there, and so within the wines, the wine that was in with that we made out of that particular block, because all the blocks, when we pick them throughout all our holdings, we keep them separate within the winery as separate winemaking parcels. That they most of the time end up sort of, I guess, all together for the yellow label Chardonnay, but it gives us the ability to sort of tweak the wine and the style. So we're able to do a selection of barrels out of that block in 2019. And it was a selection of sort of newer and older oak. Then 2019 sort of gave us that, we can sort of pick this more elegant, style of Chardonnay not as much oak as what we traditionally do in our yellow label and our obsessive Chardonnay. So then 2020 came along and we sort of just tweaked it a little bit. What we did is we then selected another block from, as Liz and I sort of did our once weekly drive around, our little sort of hot date once a week, running around all the blocks, and that came out from our Branxton block, and there's I should say our cottage block, and that there's a newer clone which is 548, and that again, but 2020 very difficult year, drought, and then bushfires and the like, but. So it's a little bit fuller than the 19 was. And then 2021, we basically ran with that one from the same block again out at the cottage block, the 548. But it pretty much, the wines now hit style-wise when we first started, where I was sort of kind of had in my head where I would like the wine to be, which is, not the exact opposite to essentially our house style, but more elegant, a bit of struck match, nice full palate, fruit weight, a little bit of oak there, but not the sort of defining character of the wine and the like. So,
that sounds so exciting, but it's also really clever, I think, to have your complete different tiers, and I really appreciate that in the Scarborough portfolio there really seems to be something for everyone, from the ground up, from the wines and the different tiers that you have down to the tasting experience when someone comes to your cellar door as well, and I think that it's been a very thoughtful approach to how you say, I want everyone to get something out of your wines, and there's something for everyone there. Does a lot of thought go into how you communicate what you do at Scarborough?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I guess, that's really my sister's portfolio, what she does, Sally. And, she does that very well. So from, through how we do it in the cellar door with, the face-to-face, tutored tastings that we do in the cellar door, through to what we do, in the social media and I guess the e-commerce, emails going out to customers and so on. And, because it's really, I guess, wine for a lot of people can be a bit intimidating. There's a lot of variables there within wine, and sometimes it can be, really difficult to decide what style of wine you do like, what you don't like, what variety. Should a wine be old? Should it be younger? Should it be chilled? How cold it should be? What food you should have it with. And I guess what we try to do is, demystify all of that, because, I mean, if someone's feeling comfortable about picking a wine, they're more likely to drink that, whether they're at home or at a restaurant or at a friend's place or whatever it may be. And I think, Sally does that very well with all those sort of, what we do in the cellar door face-to-face, but the other things that we communicate out to people as well. So...
Yeah, I think you're right. It's so important. And if everybody can, feel comfortable and enjoy wine, then we're kind of winning for everybody. But the Hunter, as you touched on in those last few years, particularly 19, 20 and 21, it's such a region of extreme temperatures. I suppose this is a question maybe for you, Liz. What are the major pressures of vintage, and how do you combat them to achieve quality wine?
Oh, I have a toolbox, and different seasons need different things. So, we started this season actually with super wet conditions, and I added helicopters to my toolbox for early season protectant fungiciding. As you do. Yeah, something I never thought would happen. But it was the appropriate tool for us to preserve the ground and avoid compaction early, and then we were able to get really good access back on and commence normal ground spraying. And now we've had, I think, only 3 rain days in the last 4 weeks, which is fabulous, and we're back to irrigating. We're talking about the potential need to use sunscreen on a couple of blocks, which is just a really lovely inert clay that just coats our canopies and fruit with a white film to protect and keep things cool. Because the vines have had, quite a tender season, they're a little bit more vulnerable So probably getting sunburnt, a bit the same as us. If we, hadn't spent much time outside and suddenly you go out there on the 40-degree day, you get cooked. So we just keep delving through that toolbox, and you play with it and you adjust it. And even our irrigation strategy is quite light and conservative at the moment. It's just little sips regularly rather than big deep irrigations, because we're just trying to keep things holding as opposed to rampantly growing. So, it's just attention to detail. Yeah.
When you talk about things, I like to think when I'm listening to this podcast that we, involve everybody. When you're talking about something like spraying something like sun cream, a lot of people's thoughts are, well, doesn't that sun cream then go into the wine? Can you explain a little bit about that? And then also helicopters, we've seen helicopters used to kind of disperse kind of mist and kind of fog. Explain exactly how you're using those just for everybody.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start with sunscreen. Sunscreen is kaolin clay, like you would use to make pottery or a makeup base. It's a natural, soil sort of structured base product. And basically the people who manufacture that commercially for our industry and agriculture in general, they cook it and they make it hard. They then mill it finely, and it's a super fine clay powder, and we just apply that with a normal fungicide cart. We have to apply it below 28 degrees, otherwise it dries before it hits the vine. So you put it on early in the day if you think there's going to be a heat event, and it's inert. So when we process our fruit, when you can have cloudy or clear apple juice, when we press wine grapes for white wine, they've got that cloudiness. All that solid material and the clay just settles out to the bottom of the tank in that first day or so after crushing and pressing. So it doesn't end up in the wine, but it doesn't have any impact either. It's just another like adding a bag of sand, really. So no great dramas. So we would normally apply really simple early season protectant fungicides to keep fungal disease away, particularly when it's wet. So normally copper and sulphur, nothing too complex. And so this year we did that with some helicopters. So we had maps. There's quite a bit of preparation. We GPSed maps, and that goes into the pilot's iPad that I presume is connected to his helicopter. I didn't go up in the helicopter. And we're just using that same chemistry applied at a very low rate. They were very nimble and amazing, literally just flying above the top of the trellis posts. So, it's not the kind of practice we would do all season. It was really, it was a short-term measure while we had small canopies and little bits of leaf just to get protectant on it while the heavens kept being open and kept raining. So, yeah, not a long-term proposition, but definitely helped us out and gave us another 3 or 4 weeks for that ground to dry out and us not to impact on our soil structure.
See, now you said that so much better than I ever would, so I'm so glad I asked that question. Liz, this might be a little bit of a controversial one for you, but what would you say to people that talk about perhaps wines and natural wines or wines that haven't had any kind of intervention? How do you approach that when you do what you do and is what you know? What is your response to people that talk about wines that haven't had any kind of agrochemicals or anything used?
I think it's about time and place. If there are some regions and climates where there's certainly that possibility of lower input, or maybe a few regions where there's no input. I think for me, understanding our weather patterns and what drives certain diseases. In the hunter, there's really a level of intervention required if you want to successfully get a crop off. I think this year would be one of those years, had we not intervened with anything, you would have had no leaves on your vine at the moment at all. So, if you're in a place that has a drier spring, summer, certainly a possibility, but not in the rainfall pattern where we are. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach this. It is all about what you're producing in what region and what, cultural or weather patterns you're kind of looking at. It's all about place, isn't it?
And you're also weighing up your impacts. So sometimes for me, selection of certain chemistry might mean that I don't have to traffic that vineyard again for 2 to 3 weeks, versus if I use different chemistry, which is shorter term, I might have to go in more often. So it's a bigger picture than just looking at the sustainability aspect from what bit of chemistry. It's also about, energy and labour an impact on the greater vineyard ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, even labour, that something like having lots of pickers come in, that certainly has an imprint just in terms of feeding and housing people. So there's always there's ebbs and flows of every action that you take, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
When it comes to Scarborough, it's clear that family's a hugely important part of your lives. How do you approach continuing a family legacy? What have you done with your children? Are they interested in wine? How do you go forth with, wanting to continue passing down that kind of knowledge and also something like a winery perhaps to your children?
I'll start with they're definitely very keen wine consumers. I suspect they drink better than your average 19 and 22-year-old. And we are trying to certainly do the same things that Ian and Merrily did for us and share great wines with them and bring them on the journey and, expose them to different varieties and regions and vintages. And that's a lovely thing to do. And I know Ian certainly enjoys it when the kids are home to do the same thing. So they are flirting with it. Callum, our eldest, is currently working in Central Otago, having a 12-month vineyard internship in a different place, which is great, and he's loving that. And our youngest is doing arts and science in Sydney at uni. So we'll wait and see. But, yeah, certainly no pressure from us at the moment to come home. We'd really like them to go and find their feet on their own.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, I mean, they need to, as Liz said, find their own feet and get their experience and the like. And if there happens to be an interest in coming back to the family business, great, and there will always be an opening there. And we will structure the business to allow for that. But they certainly need to, earn their stripes first. Get the experience of the world, and enjoy life before coming back to, if they do, back to a family business. I think it's that life experience within a business like ours is very important.
I love that approach, and I can't believe how consistent it is for a lot of wineries and winemaking families to have that approach. I feel like perhaps if people were lawyers, within families or medical professionals, if they had that approach, perhaps more people would come back to family businesses by just letting them have that life experience. So I commend you for that, because I think it's very big of you, and also scary as well, in case they do decide that, they want to be a professional skateboarder or whatever it may be, a rock star.
Exactly.
You both appear very much to be into growing and cooking. You've got a beautiful kitchen garden there. And I was actually looking on your website, and I almost was late just because I was checking out some of the recipes on there, actually. What does Christmas dinner look like in the Scarborough household?
Well, I'm in charge of salads, and I keep saying I'm a bit non-committal about what they'll be, because it really depends what's ripe in the veggie patch. But we are tracking nicely for tomatoes and burrata and basil salads, amongst others. It'll be a cold lunch this year. We're down in Newcastle, so some lovely seafood. You've got to have ham, obviously. And the signature dish will be Sally's white chocolate macadamia white peach trifle.
Holy moly. That sounds delicious.
And I do a bit of curing as well, so we potentially there will be a ham, homemade ham, and a whole bunch of charcuterie, so as well. So it's just sitting in the curing fridge vault at the moment. So I'm hoping that they'll be ready to go come Christmas.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And I have to say, I'm normally in charge of salads too, Liz, and I actually think it's one of the most exciting parts. Firstly, because like you said, just have to figure out what's in season and kind of look at what's good as well. But like you said, you can kind of pre-prepare it and then throw it together and, enjoy your gin or whatever you're drinking on the day. But cured meat sounds amazing. I need to get someone in my family into doing that.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than people think, but you need to make sure you get it right. So, but it is good fun.
And what do you think you'll be drinking on the table? Do you have the classic sparkling Shiraz with your ham, or are you drinking Scarborough wines, or do you like to throw the boat out and drink something completely different?
Yeah, look, it's from across the world basically, and part of it is my mother Merrily really enjoys her French champagne, so there will certainly be some top end French bubbles sort of on the list to start the day for breakfast and then for lunch. And then, it just really depends what's to hand. But whether it's Eden Valley Riesling or Pinot from Tassie or the Yarra Valley or from Burgundy and so on. It'll just basically there'll be several dozen wine taken down, and then depending on what the final menu is, we'll sort of match it as we go along.
And we have there is a bit of gin action going on these days. So now that the kids are both old enough to legally drink, there may be some little gin cocktails in between courses.
So good. I mean, this is the fun part of Christmas, isn't it? Thinking, what are we eating and what are we drinking and how do we extend that session of half an hour meal to, multiple hours. I love that.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask, is there a day or a memory that stands out as one of the highlights for you both of working together in the wine industry?
Look, I think it's seeing each other, have those achievements, either locally with some recognition, and Jeremy was Viticulturist of the Year locally this year. That was pretty special. But I think it's just successfully seeing fruit come in and go to bottle and being really happy with the wines that have come out. There's a lot of blood, sweat, tears and worry that go into the season. So that's kind of it, really.
Yeah, well, and thankfully that comes around once a year. But I think for me, when Liz got the Graham Gregory Award, I think that was something very, very special.
Oh, you both have had, in fact, in the whole family, there was too many awards for me to mention. First of all, I thought I'm going to have to make sure I remember, exactly all the names of these awards. But I got to a certain point, I was like, no, I can't mention all of those. They know what they've done. Yeah. They're pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think that those awards, which are, when it's recognition by your peers, so you've been nominated and then voted on by your peers. They're the ones that sort of really pull the heartstrings. So.
Yeah, and I think because we're not in each other's pockets each day. The day a week at the moment we go out to vineyards together are really nice. Some days we drop in at the local bakery come cafe Fork and we'll have brekkie together between vineyards, and I think it's a shared vision. So it's nice we can have a fairly robust debate maybe about how to skin the cat, but we work. I think we bring different things to the table. So I'm not particularly mechanical, and I might go, could you do that? And I get a bit of an eye roll, and then I can see Jeremy process it and go, well, yeah, okay, let's take it this way. And that combined solution is better. So, that's pretty nice to be able to do that together and, then share in the victory when it pays off.
Yeah. I can't imagine the banter. I'm sure I'd be left far behind if the two of you were talking about what you're doing. I'd be like, I need to Google Translate for something like this. I don't know what they're talking about.
Vidi Translate, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how much our kids have actually sort of picked up through the years where they've been around the dinner table with us and so on, and sometimes like. I was out to dinner with my daughter last night, and we had a very nice meal and a couple of nice wines, and just that sort of knowledge Hannah sort of absorbed, and just talking about the different things and the wine styles and so on. And it was really nice to see that that she's not just sitting there always sitting on a phone flicking through all the different things. She is actually tuning in and so on. So yeah.
Well, they're very, very lucky to have the both of you, and also to be born into the family, that's for sure. I ask everybody on the podcast, if you could only drink 3 beverages for the rest of your life, what would they be and why? Liz, do you want to start us off?
So look, I think for me, it'd be pretty hard to take a cold beer off the list, coming in during vintage or after mowing the lawn. That's always going to be there. I do always have that desert island conversation where I go, if I could only take 2 grape varieties, what would they be? and I think I would have to take a crispy Riesling and probably, I know it sounds just a bit too tame, but probably a Shiraz. You know, you can do so much with it, you know, a bit fortified, a lovely red for when it's colder in winter. But as you mentioned, a little sparkling Shiraz doesn't go astray from time to time.
For me, I guess, a gin and tonic, and obviously there's a wide variety of what you can do there, or a gin and mixer. Then I guess I then sort of fall to two wine varieties or styles. So Hunter Valley Semillon, be it young or old, I think it's always a great wine, and it suits so many food styles. And then I guess the final one, I really sort of, there's so many other things I'd like to choose, and sort of all equal to each other, but a good Barolo is really hard to beat. Again, sort of the not early drinking, but 4 or 5 years of age, and then something that's got a serious amount of age on it. I think they're truly complex, interesting wines. So.
And look, between the two of you, you've covered off a lot. This is why you're so complimentary. I see it now. This is how you get to 26 years. That desert island, it's got it covered for all the drinks.
Yeah, I could work with that. Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for coming on the podcast and chatting to us both. Have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope I see you up in your winery, or perhaps up in the Hunter at sometime soon. I don't doubt that our paths will cross again.
Very good.
Fabulous.
Thanks for the chat.
You're welcome anytime.
Thanks so much. Cheers to you both. This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod, and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.